Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the February 12th, 2019 meeting of the Trust, and I'd recognize a motion to that effect. It's been moved and seconded. We'll vote. Approved. We now have a number of items on the consent docket, which we would, I would suggest that we would approve altogether with any questions being dealt with before we vote. Thank you. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll vote. Approved. We'll skip the emergency construction contract and get for the items for individual consideration. First, we have a presentation on the distribution system's nitrification evaluation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nathan Maddenwall with our engineering group is here to give you a short presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Trustees. This will be just a brief presentation on the water distribution system evaluation. We're have a proposed amendment in front of you for engineering services. So we'll give a brief update on the project and what the proposed amendment includes. Okay. So we'll do a brief overview of the project, talk about the scope, and then the amendment. So if we look at this slide here that shows Oklahoma City and the water system that serves our customers. Couple things to note. It's a large water system. We have about 3,500 miles of distribution mains in our system. It covers a large area because Oklahoma City has a large incorporated area. And we have varying usage patterns throughout different seasons. So summer months we have higher usage, so we have more water flowing through the pipe faster, and then in winter months we have less usage. So what those means is we have a disinfectant that we put in our system to make sure we have good quality water, clean water that gets to our customers. Those get challenged depending on the different situations and how far the water has to go. So we have a consultant who's been working on this project. The first thing they did was develop a monitoring plan for how we're going to evaluate our system, to determine where nitrification might be occurring within the system. We developed the plan, they've implemented it, and it's ongoing right now. They plan to finish it up in April of this year. So they're looking at water quality sample results in accordance with that plan, and then they'll develop a nitrification action plan based on the results that they see. What that will entail is we'll look at different things that occur in our system to know what triggers might be and how our people need to operate our system to make sure we're doing it effectively and ensure good water quality. So this is a map showing locations throughout the city that we're using as part of our water quality analysis. We looked at where the water is coming from, what's coming out of our treatment plants. We looked at our booster station facilities and water tanks, and then looked at areas around town where we think that there may be high water age because the chemicals will break down over time. So those are more critical areas. So they're going to complete that analysis per the original scope of the contract, but the amendment in front of you today, there's really 4 items there. The first one is staff training. So we'll have a nitrification action plan saying these are the steps we need to do. We need to provide training to our staff for that, and then we also need to memorialize that so future staff that we bring online, we can show them that same training and they'll know how to respond to any events. Corrosion inhibitor evaluation. So to make sure that we don't have chemicals that leach out of our system, we feed a corrosion inhibitor currently. We want to take another look at that. Not that there's anything going wrong with that. We just want to make sure that we're using the right thing for our system. So we have a 2-level approach to this. The first part, we're going to be doing a high-level analysis where we'll be looking at industry standards, looking at how our system's operating currently, and then we'll bring a technical review committee in to look at that information. That will include industry experts, academia, and regulatory experts. And they'll look at that, make a determination, are we using the right thing or should we make a change? Do we have enough information to make that decision now? or do we need to go to the next level, which we have, and this is an item within additional services. It's called a pipe loop test, where we'll run different scenarios, different chemical constituents through a system, see how they operate, and then determine what's best for our system. And I'll show you a picture of that here in just a second. And then the last item within this proposed amendment is a water age analysis for the FAA campus. So right now we're providing service to the FAA campus. It's a confined system, or water comes in and there's nowhere way for it to go out. So we're going to have them take a closer look in that, just because that's a significant area within our system. So, and the pipe loop, so here's a picture showing what we may do if we get to this point. So this is a installation that was done at another water treatment plant. So you have tanks that you set up, and then you have pumps which push water through pipe that you actually extract from your own distribution system to see how it operates. So you feed chemicals at different rates, or different types of chemicals, to see is there corrosion occurring on those pipes. So that way we can make sure we're using the right solution, because we're doing it on pipes from our system. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions?
So the pipes that are used, like in that picture, what's the material that they're made out of?
Ductile iron or cast iron pipe.
Okay, so I was at a facility that provides pipe in the oil and gas industry, both transportation of fuel, but also water used in fracking. And they've got a pipe that's got fiberglass on the outside to provide the strength, but it's, I'm going to use the word, it's not rubber, but some kind of other material,
Okay.
you know. And they say they can make them up to 72 inches in width to transport water and all sorts of things. And I'm sure we've looked at the advantages of using either cast iron, steel, or some other products, but is there any opportunity to look at new types of pipe being used in terms of less weight, longer lasting, and less corrosive?
What we're testing here is the older pipes in the system, because
Yes.
that's where we're getting the corrosion.
Right.
A lot of our new water mains are made out of high-density PVC pipe. It's called
Okay.
C900.
Mm-hmm.
And it's resistant to corrosion
Yeah.
and other things.
Right.
That's, in the water industry, it's not one pipe solves everything. It depends on the nature of the soil, whether it's sandy, whether it's corrosive, whether there's a lot of rock. So we actually use different kinds of pipes in different areas in the city. But the areas that we're getting the corrosion problem is primarily in the older pipes that are unlined, and we have about 1,200 miles of those old pipes. And so that was one of the big causes of the Flint, Michigan issue was corrosion control or lack of.
I see.
And so we take this very seriously. And we are using a corrosion inhibitor right now, but it is having an impact on the nitrification of our system. And so we're taking a look, is there something better that we can use, and we don't want to just try it in the system.
Right.
Because if it causes a problem, we want to fully vet it before we actually decide whether we're going to keep doing what we're doing or move to a different corrosion inhibitor. So that's what this process is about. Now, simply speaking, the nitrification process is an aging process where the water gets to a certain point. We add chlorine and ammonia so that we extend the life of the chlorine. And especially in the summertime, the chlorine dissipates as the water gets older. And so we end up having to go out and flush a bunch of water till we can get the chlorine levels back up. So once we know where we are hitting that break point, we can modify the usage and the patterns of usage within the system, move water around differently so that we don't extend the life, the age of that water, so we don't have to flush so much. So that's what this whole program is about. And then the phase two is we found our corrosion inhibitor is causing some of that nitrification, so we want to see if there's something better. So that's what this whole project's about.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nathan?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I would recognize a motion to approve this amendment number 1. Been moved and seconded. We'll vote. Approved. We'll now go back up to the emergency construction contracts by resolution. It's a resolution ratifying the actions of the general manager and declaring an emergency and authorizing Smith, Roberts, Baldwin, LLC to proceed with project WT 0230, Draper Water Treatment Plant Electrical Rehabilitation under the auspices of contract for engineering services for the independent engineer serving the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust, a fee of $168,312.
Move the resolution.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any questions or comments? If not, we'll vote. Approved. There was a requirement of 4 affirmative votes, and there were 4 affirmative votes. Now moving into item B under 6, a presentation on the Sardis Lake and the Conformed Settlement Agreement.
Mr. Chairman, Craig Keith from the Municipal Counselor's Office is here to present.
Mr. Chairman, trustees, this item is related to Lake Sardis and the Conformed Settlement Agreement. Lake Sardis being a new, beautiful lake down in southeast Oklahoma, to which the Water Trust has purchased storage rights. On August 16th, on 2016, the Water Trust and the city approved a settlement agreement to settle the outstanding water rights lawsuits with the Chickasaw Nation, the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and the state. The settlement agreement itself provided for conformance of the agreement in the future after federal legislation was passed. Federal legislation was necessary in order to authorize the settlement, both in their role as trustee of the Native American nations and their role through the Department of the Interior. On December 16, 2016, the President signed Public Law 114-322, which approved and authorized the settlement agreement. Since then, the parties have jointly worked together to conform the settlement agreement to the Settlement Act, the federal legislation. The parties have agreed to execute the conformed settlement agreement on March 1st, 2019. We have a resolution before you now authorizing the chairperson and the secretary to sign the conformed settlement agreement because we will not be meeting on that date. After the conformed settlement agreement has been approved by all the parties, it will be forwarded to the Secretary of the Interior and the federal government for execution. Next. What has been changed or what is conformed in the settlement agreement? The settlement agreement conforms and combines the Settlement Act with the September 11, 2009 order. And that was an order to which the city was not a party but affects the overall settlement. It was a lawsuit between the United States government and the state of Oklahoma on the repayment of the storage issues out at Sardis Lake. Those payments have since been paid by the Water Trust pursuant to the 2010 storage agreement. The storage agreement also needed to be conformed to the Settlement Act, and in the end, the new conformed settlement agreement will address all of these issues. The conformed settlement agreement clarifies the Sardis Lake conservation storage capacity, which is important in terms of the Water Trust, in that it designates what storage is included in the present water storage for which we are paying and what is in the future storage for which we will not be paying. It also clarified the water rights procedures for allottees of the Chickasaw Nation and the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma in terms of having their membership be able to apply for water rights, and also set an enforceability date for both the Settlement Act and the Conformed Settlement Agreement. It revised the waivers and releases by the Choctaw Nation and Chickasaw Nation in order for the settlement to be effective. It clarified and revised some locations of groundwater wells related to some rights of some of the allottees and members of the Chickasaw and Choctaw Nation. And it corrected and made consistent certain captions and terminology. It identified the signatories and specific agencies to be signing the conformed settlement agreement as per the Settlement Act. It deleted preconditioned actions that have already taken place and are no longer needed to be referenced in the agreement, and then renumbered the sections and paragraphs. Next, please. So before you today, you have a resolution. Similar resolution was before the City Council this morning, was approved. The resolution for the Water Trust authorizes the chairperson and the secretary to sign the conformed settlement agreement and the conformed exhibits. The conformed exhibits do not substantively affect the Water Trust or the city. They relate to other issues that don't affect our substantive rights. So we are set for March 1 for an execution by the Chickasaw Nation, Choctaw Nation, State, and City and Trust. Subsequently, the conformed settlement agreement will be forwarded to the federal government for execution and review through their processes. In the meantime, the City and the Trust continue its defense of the Oklahoma Water Resources Board permit number 2017-17, which is on appeal currently, has been granted but is on appeal, and we're defending that issuance. There is an order which will need to be drafted to resolve or dismiss the September 2009 order against the state of Oklahoma by the United States government. That should be more of a formality, as the Water Trust and the city have already paid all the outstanding debt referenced in that, but that case still needs to be closed. There will need to be an order dismissing the two pending lawsuits that are settled through the settlement agreement and the conformed settlement agreement between the parties, the state, the Chickasaw Nation, Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, Aquat, and the city. And then we will be implementing and performing acts in compliance with the conformed settlement agreement and settlement act. Subsequent to that, there will be studies done, design studies, archaeological studies, environmental studies, to look at pipeline locations and a point of diversion. After that, we'll achieve our ultimate goal, which is to provide better and enhanced water service to central Oklahoma and communities along the pipeline. Are there any questions?
I'd move the joint resolution for approval.
Been moved and seconded. Any other comments? We'll vote. Approved. Are there any items from trustees? General Manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The most important item I have on my list today is a happy birthday to Councilman Greenwell. Thank you. So, with that said, everything else is incidental. Our pro forma indicates that we are still a little under on our water sales, but we're holding our own on our wastewater, and our expenses on the wastewater side seem to be tracking a little lower than normal. Our expenses on water side are tracking a little lower than normal, but we still have a delta between our expenses and our revenues. We're going to continue to track that, but we should be in pretty good shape by the end of the year if nothing changes. The last thing is we won a national award. The American Council of Engineering Companies has given us an award, or will be presenting us an award, for Hafner Water Treatment Plant sludge handling facility. The award will be presented in Washington, D.C., May the 7th, and it is a black tie event. So what I'd like to know is, are any of you all interested in attending? You don't have to tell me right now. We have till March 27th or 22nd to determine who's going to go, and then we'll make the arrangements accordingly. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? That's right, yes. Any citizens to be heard? Seeing none, we're adjourned.